Alright, I'm going to start off by saying that there are spoilers in this video. That's your one and only warning. Leave if you want to save yourself, or stay and listen to what I have to say about the game. Now, let's get into the video. I want to start off by saying something that most of you already know. Video games are very different. Some are multiplayer based, single player based, first person perspective, third person, linear paths, open worlds, and so much more. One thing though that has always interested me is the stories that games want to tell. There are plenty of examples where games can disappoint on that front. Call of Duty World War II, Battlefront 2 on PS4, Mass Effect Andromeda, For Honor, The Division, MK11, and more. Plenty more examples. However, there are stories that hit home in our hearts and characters we bond with by great storytelling. Do I really need... I can list out examples for you. Spider-Man PS4. The Mass Effect trilogy for the most part. The first couple Halo games as well as Halo ODST. Even the Uncharted series. There are a lot of examples that you can find. And that's only video games. It can be applied to TV shows, movies, and even series written on YouTube. This, however, brings me to The Last of Us 2. In this current day, the world is oversaturated. And a lot of markets in the world of entertainment. It feels like it's slowly becoming harder to come up with a basic new concept or idea. However, this is where creators can thrive if they manage to make something refreshing within the genre or within those basic concepts or ideas. For example, the superhero genre has been in the forefront of several global countries for the past decade or more. The Marvel Cinematic Universe had started to get into a similar formula of a new villain emerges to challenge the hero. The hero is challenged in some form or way, but they manage to overcome the odds at the end of the day and best the villain. And their story moves on with small effect most of the time, or almost no effect, upon the characters themselves. However, there are several of these films that try to do something different in their respective shows or films. For example, Daredevil, a superhero show on Netflix, tried to make a more grounded to reality show. And it showed the wear and tear on an everyday hero who's trying to juggle his relationships, identity, and responsibilities. Now, you could easily give the example of Spider-Man, but for a live action series to attempt to do it very well, it's not easy. It came with compelling villains, realistic villains at times. Some that most lacked superpowers. It was very grounded in reality and trying to make you at least believe that it could happen, aside from Daredevil's powers. And to give another example, The Dark Knight tried to make a more gritty and dark version as a sequel. In the trilogy of the Batman films, where a villain ultimately bested and permanently altered the Batman character going forward and left the city in a stage of uncertainty and darkness. And ultimately won. He ultimately won. It was a groundbreaking and changing film when it came to superheroes. And in my respective opinion, I believe that it surpassed its predecessor. Guardians of the Galaxy is another one. It focused on taking people from all different walks of life with different motivations and they all came together to save the galaxy. Even Infinity War had a systematic destruction of all of our beloved heroes. Some of them were killed, few of them were killed at first, but Thanos ultimately defeated them one by one, and we watched and saw the hope slowly fade from their eyes before they were defeated with a mere snap of the finger, and left wondering how they'd recover. I cite these examples because there are writers who try to tell compelling and interesting stories in a genre filled to the brim with characters and stories already. These movies had their flaws as well, and you can pick them apart, but their strengths greatly outweigh their weaknesses. And I know that I was kind of scratching on the edge of the surface when it came to those films, but to be fair, I'm trying to get back to The Last of Us, which brings me back to The Last of Us story as a whole. As a story in the first game, within a post-apocalyptic world, it's focused around Joel and Ellie. Joel being a grizzled veteran within this environment, and Ellie being a younger girl, but still having her own tragic experiences in this environment. Right out of the gate, we watch Joel lose his daughter in the beginning of the story, in a tragic, horrible way, at the start of this apocalyptic world. From there on, the journey takes us on a roller coaster ride of emotions, tough decisions, heartbreak, and controversial moments in morality. It showed that the world they were writing was one of moral grace, especially with the ending. The ending of The Last of Us saw that Ellie could potentially be used to make a cure for the human race, but at the expense of her own life. Joel made the moral decision to save her and kill as many people as he could within that compound who had tried to stop him. And he further reasoned that he had to kill all of them because they would just come after her. He saved her life, but potentially doomed the human race. We switch to Ellie's perspective at the end of the game, and we see the final moments from we hear the final statements from both characters. She references her best friend, and how they both waited to die after they were both bitten. The death of Tess, Sam, and his brother. More death that we saw within the game. Joel proceeds to highlight the fact that he struggled with finding a reason to survive for years. Even then, you can see the subtle detail of him touching the watch that his daughter gave him right before she died. Not only that, he urges her to keep finding something to fight for, Ellie. And in response, she makes him swear that everything he said about the fireflies, the ones that wanted to use her to make a cure, was true, which he swore to her without hesitation, and ultimately lied to her. It's also up to interpretation if she doubted him right then and there or not, based upon the ending as he walks back to Jackson, the place they were at, or going to, civilization. But that's ultimately the end. They headed back to civilization. To me, it was a morally grace decision that wrapped up a fantastic game graphically and a compelling story as a narrative for the viewer. In my opinion, it was a game that didn't need really a sequel. You had a controversial ending, but there's hope within that. There's the hope that something will come out of this, and they'll still find a way through everything. In the end, it can go many different ways as well, and left it up to the viewer on what to think about all the decisions and choices that were made up to that point, and people have broken it down in full. Plenty of times. Analyze the game like they always do on the internet and oversaturate it. Now, after almost a decade of waiting for a lot of people, Naughty Dog announced that they'd be releasing a sequel. After all the years of many different fans buying the game, connecting with the characters, and waiting for a follow-up, this created hype and expectations. Fans started wanting things a certain way, and that's to be expected. We've developed an attachment to these characters and want to carry on their stories. What we got felt like a gut-wrenching punch. That's what it felt like for many people. I'm going to list out my positives first, though, before I go any further. I think it's a beautifully graphical game with beautiful environments. The music as well helped amplify scenes for the viewer, and some of the flashbacks were heartwarming to see between Ellie and Joel. The game was fairly solid, but some of the AI, of course, are kind of dumb at times when it comes to seeing the main character when you're sneaking around. Salvaging and scrounging around for parts can become tedious and fairly annoying for some people who just want to experience the story itself Speaking of which, that leads me back to talking about that category. So feel free, if you've already heard this so many times, because I know that people have pretty much beaten it to a dead horse, and I'm like a hyena, or fighting for my share, trying to get in at the last minute. But the story took place several years after the events of the first game. Ellie found out the truth that Joel lied to her and hates him for it. She's in love with this girl named Dina. There's also some relationship drama with an ex-boyfriend. A new character named Abby leads a military group toward Jackson. And she actually is aided by Joel and his brother Tommy before it is by them saving her life. But ultimately, it's revealed that she has been wanting revenge on Joel. The reason being is that her father was one of the doctors who was going to operate on Ellie to make a potential cure. So, she quite literally tries to cave his head in. And with her meaty arms, with a golf club. Are we getting any Walking Dead vibes at all? I think so. Ellie found Joel just as they were finishing up and swore revenge to kill Abby. For reasons, probably because they needed an actual plot, the group spares Ellie and Tommy. Which, sure, you go game. Just write however you want. The plot weaves through the country after that as Ellie goes on a revenge rampage after Abby. She kills most of Abby's friends, but ultimately fails in her ultimate goal. Jesse, the ex-boyfriend, is killed by Abby. Other plot point is revealed when Dina tells Ellie that she is pregnant. If you didn't think this was satisfying enough, the game has you focus on Abby as well as with flashbacks to help you maybe sympathize with the new character for a decision. It also takes the time to add layers. It takes the time to add layers to her character and show events going on from her point of view. Ultimately, she beats Ellie at the end, but spares her life because Ellie tells her Dina is pregnant, and the defeated protagonist goes back home where she and Dina begin to live a family life with their new baby. But anyways, Tommy returns though and offers one last shot of revenge for Ellie, who takes it. Dina warns her though that she won't support this decision and will leave Ellie. Well, regardless, Ellie goes after Abby, who's captured with Lev, a character she connected with from her perspective, by another faction. Ellie rescues them and proceeds to have one final showdown with Abby for the player. However, as she's holding Abby underwater to choke her out, she decided to let her go and allow her to leave with Lev. She goes home and only to find that Dina has left with the baby and Ellie can't even play Joel's old guitar due to losing a few fingers in the fight. She leaves the house after one final flashback to show that she wanted to start to move past her hatred toward Joel and roll credits. Ultimately, the writing is careless and lazy at times, especially with Joel's death. Let me think about it. It comes across as writing up a situation for him to be killed while also betraying what the previous game tried to establish. His character was written to be thoughtful and analyze the situation, especially out there in the crazy, chaotic world that they wrote. He also had a giant problem with letting his guard down in almost every way, but slowly opened up a bit to Ellie. This might be part of the reason why fans feel like it's such a portrayal of the character that he and Tommy would tell complete strangers who they are and where they're from. But not only that, but we also had the bare minimum information on Abby's character at this point. So she killed him with almost no hesitation, despite him saving her life moments ago. It felt rushed and lazily written for many people, and rightfully so. So you can still kill Joel, but polish up the writing maybe, preferably, to make the situation better, or at least make his death have more weight to it than just, oh, he's dead. Okay, this is where we're doing it. You could have had him keep up his guard, for example, but still help them further. You can even get some more background on Abby and even show before she kills him, and even her struggling to make the choice between killing him once she knows who he is down the line. Show the moral gray of the character through, or at least before the lead up, and before, or rather than having her murder him in cold blood and try to justify the reasoning to the viewer later, because it feels like, oh, we killed him. Here's the reason why. As far as the relationship triangle goes for Ellie, Dina, and Jesse, the ex-boyfriend, it could have been written better. I personally don't really care if you want to write a character gay, straight, lesbian, or anything else. Just make the writing interesting for the viewer while also having it serve a purpose to the plot, without it being used as a convenience and make it seem like it was lazily put in to help serve a plot point. Just saying, like, you can bring up all this stuff, you can have the focus around her family as long as it serves a purpose, and actually write the characters better. Have them engage in more dialogue, more natural dialogue. Have emotional investment within them. Show the characters grow and their love between each other. Like, help establish why Dina is attracted maybe to Ellie, or why Ellie is attracted to Dina. Like, seriously, I don't care if you're gonna do a lesbian relationship, but at least write it well to where people might care about it. It's similar to how Joel, like, write the relationship well. Like Joel and Ellie's relationship in the first one. I mean, they weren't dating or anything, which is kind of weird, but they had some sort of bond or connection or relationship there to where you get emotionally invested in their connection with each other. Whereas Dina and Ellie feels like a disconnect because they don't do as good of a job writing it. And it feels cringy at times, awkward, but luckily it wasn't like a glaring giant problem to me, like the biggest fish in the pond, so to speak. The bigot sandwich scene just felt like it's been overdone, just because I've seen so many where it's got to be, oh, the old white guy has a problem with change and the acceptance of lesbians, gays, and everybody else. Yeah, no, it's been overdone, which is fine. I don't really care, but it's just a roll of the eyes because it's like, oh, here we go again. I've seen this a million times. And what is a shame is that the bigot kind of made some sort of effort to apologize as well, but didn't get forgiven at all. And then the bigot sandwich, like, he made sandwiches for them, and then she basically says it's a bigot sandwich. I'm like, wow, okay. It's kind of rude. That's rude right back, but whatever. Even the dialogue in this, in a scene that was supposed to feel a bit awkward, felt cringy, especially for Ellie in that situation. Anyways. A big question, though, that I felt wasn't addressed was why Dina being pregnant was the catalyst for Abby letting them go. Why? They've been trying to kill you this whole time. Killed and tortured some of your friends as well. If you don't kill them, they might come after you, or they might continue to be a problem down the road. Crazy thing is that for the second time in the game, she lets them go, only for Ellie to come after her again. Did you spare them because you have a heart? Well, clearly not, because, you clearly don't have that big of a heart, because you lack the compassion to care that much when you torture Joel by slowly beating him to death with a golf club. At least Joel had the decency to stab your father in the throat and kill him right then and there. But you let Joel lay there, slowly dying, while he feels his head caving in for several minutes. Now, this isn't a competition, everyone, on who had the more brutal kill. But Joel's character was more focused on saving Ellie and taking it out on everyone else who stopped him, while Abby was a premeditated thought to sadistically kill somebody. To go further on to that point, if you're Ellie and you make the moral decision to go after Abby again, why didn't you complete your revenge? Is it because you felt that the cycle of revenge needed to be broken? Was it because you felt that you'd become the very thing you swore to destroy? Is it because if you crossed that line, then you'd be no better than her? Or There's a few Batman references or Star Wars. You've killed and tortured plenty of her friends, hunted her down across the country, and even willingly sacrificed your marriage to go after her again. If you really wanted to stop this cycle right then and there, kill Abby and Lev. Sure, Lev wasn't an integral part in it, but you could kill them both and the cycle most likely will be broken there, unless I missed a detail that would prove otherwise. Because as far as I knew, they were the only two left that knew about Ellie. So if both of them are dead, you can't really have a revenge plot line in return unless, they had a connection with somebody else. So in the end, the main character loses everything, and the villain, who they try to paint as the hero, or at least a morally gray character as well, effectively wins to some extent. She got her revenge, but you, the player, who were invested with Joel and Ellie from the very first game, don't even get the satisfaction. Now, you might be asking yourself, and I figured you might, fine, Mad. How would you do it then? Well, I'm glad you asked. You probably didn't, but if you did, it's an excellent question. I'd probably give multiple variations of the ending. For example, give an option for the player to stay with Dina and reject Tommy's proposal on one last attempt at revenge. For players who don't want to continue the quest of revenge, you can get a heartwarming ending to the game, where or Ellie and Dina and their child are happily together. If you decided to go after Abby, then Dina and her child are going to leave anyways, but I'd still give the people the out, for sparing Abby, and the game played out as usual like we saw already. However, there would also be the option to kill her. If you really want to let players choose further, and really be sadistic, give them the option to kill Lev as well. Either way, Ellie would return to an empty house with her revenge satisfied or not. But if she took the route of revenge and killed them, and then the player would have to live with the consequences, as well as the player. You chose to get that, but are you truly satisfied? Maybe, based upon how the writing was, you might not have even really connected with any of the new characters at all, which would be totally understandable for how kind of cringy and awkward it was. But if you wrote a well-written story where they established a better connection, or at least reasons why Dina and Ellie like each other, and you get more of that, then potentially you could feel a little bit bad for that situation. I'm just saying. If they made a third game, the developers can also just simply pick whichever ending is canon to them and roll with that one. Give the decision to the player to determine their ending path. It would also appease more people to some extent, even with the earlier flaws in the writing. At least you could possibly get a better form of closure to the majority of the fan base, but it wouldn't excuse the rest of the errors within the plot. Let's not forget that. Just because we give a fairly decent ending doesn't mean that the rest of the plot was good. Let's not forget that part. It personally pained me, though, to watch the characters I got attached to be changed into something I didn't really recognize. Even Ellie being mad at Joel because she wanted her life to matter and now it didn't. I thought your main anger would have been that he continued to lie to you and you suspected it the whole time and wanted him to just admit it. Apparently she didn't suspect it at all or didn't really show any signs of it, which is weird in of itself. But why is it so important that you mattered in a post-apocalyptic world? I suppose it would matter to you if you're trying to obtain power or influence like The Walking Dead, but as Joel explained in the first game at the very end, you must find a reason to keep living. If your reasoning was to be important and then you no longer were, well, I guess you'd have to find another reason to live, or else be tempted like he did to potentially kill himself. This message was already preached and it felt like a regression of the character at the start. In conclusion, I feel that the game was a beautiful disappointment, like the title says. A fantastically crafted design game, but crumbled in the department that was needed most to make the game shine. Once again, it falls under the category of many failed attempts to hopefully hold a candle to the previous and original installment of the franchise. You can literally take your pick at all the others that have failed in that department as well. And some that have succeeded, like I previously mentioned with The Dark Knight. I was personally very optimistic, though, and hopeful, but felt a feeling of being robbed and disappointed with how it ended up. It is yet another piece of creation that divides fan bases and fuels social media anger. If you like this game, then that is completely fine, though. I will not tell you what you can or cannot like. However, I do firmly believe this game failed on a technical narrative point in trying to even come close to the gold standard that the original achieved. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you want me to discuss any other topic that doesn't have to be related to The Last of Us 2, it can be any other game, movie, TV show, then please leave a comment down below on your suggestions. If you'd like me to discuss points that I haven't, or that I might have missed, or even propose points that might debunk some things that I said, then feel free to hit the comment section down below. And of course, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you choose, hit the bell if you want to stay notified on when I do another one, and most importantly, I'll hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Alright.